Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, you know the old saying, you gotta strike while the iron is hot. Well, folks, the iron seems to be scalding hot in San Diego right now. And you know what? With the latest news of Nick Pivetta signing in San Diego, the writing is on the wall for a potential huge Mets trade. We're going to get into the details this video. And also, we're going to get into what did Pete Alonso say specifically that made it a hands down move for David Stearns to make this signing, because Pete Alonso said something that really inspired the New York Mets. We're going to get into that conversation as well. Well, folks, how are we all feeling? Spring training is up and running, and I feel good. Hopefully, you feel good. So let's get this video started off right. Smash that like button. We got some exclusive content to get into today. If you are a New York Mets fan, baseball fan, join the channel. We are all welcome here. Love for you to be along for the ride. And today's video specifically, when we go over the trade, let's start off with the Nick Pivetta news. Then let's look at the depth chart of the San Diego Padres. Let's look at that pitching situation. Then we'll check out their payroll situation, and then I have an exclusive trade that in my opinion makes sense for both teams. I need you to stick around. Tell me if the trade makes sense to you, and how would you tweak the trade to get this done. I said in our last video, I believe that we had a 90% chance of acquiring a front line starter. And you know what? Right after that, the signing occurred with San Diego. So what do you know? What do you know? What do you know? All right, folks, let's get into what transpired, because sometimes things just make too much sense. So the San Diego Padres really improved their pitching situation, signing Nick Pivetta. But what does that mean? What is next for Dylan Cease? So the San Diego Padres, according to Jeff Passan, are in agreement on a 4-year contract, $55 million deal that includes some interesting language, some opt-outs, and we're going to go over that right now, because all this information is very important in how the Padres are doing business, folks. You have to pay attention to how the Padres are doing business, because it could show you how it opens up opportunities for the Mets to be opportunistic. And there are very big moments. And I said you have to seize the moment right now in San Diego, because San Diego, unfortunately, they are dealing with, different dynamics than most other ball clubs. But you know what? That's not the Mets' problems. But the Mets can help the San Diego Padres and help themselves tremendously. So with the Pivetta contract, like I said, it is rather unique the way it is set up. In his first year, he is only getting $1 million with a $3 million signing bonus, telling you how important it is for the Padres to cut payroll in 2025. In 2026, his salary jumps up to $19 million. In 2027, his salary is $14 million and $18 million in 2028. Last season, Pivetta had an up and down season with the Red Sox, had a 4.14 ERA, 27 appearances, 172 Ks, only 36 walks, had a very good strikeout to walk ratio. The 31-year-old has been very, very durable. Okay, so here we go. Both Dylan Cease and Michael King have been really popping up in rumors in the last couple of weeks. Tremendously. But you know what? The Padres, they just don't want to lose depth. They are still fighting for a playoff positioning, and obviously they want to win for their fan base as well. So getting a good starter in Pivetta really, I think is a good move because it opens the door to big moves. It really does. The Padres, there's no doubt, they are in an awkward spot. They need another arm to round out this rotation, but at the same time, Pivetta's arrival really signals to all front offices that they are open for business. The former AL Cy Young runner-up was great last year, that being Dylan Cease. 224 strikeouts, 190 innings. Cease threw a no-hitter and operated as prolifically as a pitcher in baseball after the All-Star break. An All-Star pitcher, I'm sorry. San Diego should want the guy around. He's only 29, and he's one of MLB's most durable workhorses. But the fact of the matter is he is a free agent after this season. So they are not in a position where they can afford to pay a guy $150 to $200 million in free agency. That is not the way they are set up. They Michael King is their other option for trade, but he appears more likely to line up as an extension option for the Padres. King is a less proven starter than Cease, but he was almost as good as Cease last season in his first campaign as a full-time starter. A three-man gauntlet of King, Pivetta, and Darvish still stacks up well in a competitive National League. The Padres have already lost considerable ground to the Dodgers, Mets, and other top contenders. Trading Cease sets the Padres back even further, no matter what the return package is. Pivetta has never put together a full season. So any more news about Pivetta doesn't really matter. So the fact of the matter is the depth chart of the and I was looking at the depth chart for the Padres before this trade, and they had a lot of viable starters. So before the trade went down, they had about 8 guys who were viable starters. Their top starters being Dylan Cease, Michael King, Yu Darvish. Joe Musgrove is in there, but he's been often injured. But they got other guys like Matt Waldron, Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, Stephen Kolek. So that's about 8 guys. So you take out one guy, Dylan Cease, and you replace him with Nick Pivetta. So they still have 8 guys and a front line, top line, 3 top line starters. So it would be Pivetta, King, Darvish, and then 4 or 5 other guys to go with that. So they would still have a pretty deep rotation. So the Padres have Dylan Cease, and he is expendable. Dylan Cease is going to be making a salary of over almost $14 million. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but to the Padres, who last year their payroll ended up around $170 million, the estimated payroll right now is close to $210 million. Folks, they still need to cut down. Everybody on their team supposedly is up for trade except for Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. And the way the Padres have set up their contracts is as these years go on, the contracts get exponentially higher. So the Padres want to cut payroll. I mean, Manny Machado is making $17 million in 2025. Tatis Jr. is making $20 million. So 17 for Machado, 20 for Tatis Jr. In a couple years, by 2029, Tatis Jr. will be making $36 million. And by 2027, so just 2 years, Machado will be making $39 million. So just those 2 guys are going to cost the Padres almost $100 million. Almost $100 million. So that means there's not much all around to build a team. Not much all around. So the Padres would be willing to really, shift off anyone. And the Mets, their advantage is they can take on money. Their ability to take on money. So where do the Padres need help currently? I heard a couple, trades bandied about how, oh, you can help them out at center field, this and that, but you really got to look at what the Padres have on their roster. So center field is not an option. The Padres need help. They have the young superstar Jackson Merrill. He's going to be there quite a while. They are good there. They have Fernando Tatis in right field. They are good there. Jurickson Profar played left field, so left field is positional need for the Padres. They need an upgrade there. They have Jason Hayward, Connor Joe. They have a bunch of guys that mostly backups in left field. So they need help in left field. Then when you go to infield, they have Xander Bogaerts at short. Oh, they'd love somebody to take that contract. Manny Machado at third. Jake Cronenworth at second. Luis Arraez at first. So that's the infield right now. And Jake Cronenworth could play second. He could play first. He signed up until 2030. Signed up until 2030. I mean, that would be a guy that I think the Padres would love somebody else to take. Decent production guy, but the guy's signed till 2030. He's making $13 million a year, and it's just a very long contract, and I don't think the production is enough there. So, and like I said, Cronenworth could play first. So I think the Padres are definitely looking to the future. I think after Arraez next year, you could move Cronenworth to first, and that would open up a position at second base. Who do the Mets have that could play second base and play left field this year? So I think a perfect trade for the Padres and a perfect trade for the New York Mets lines up like this. So I went to Baseball Trade Values, and that's another site that you have to kind of pay for. So don't worry, folks. I have a subscription to that site as well. So I plugged in a couple trade scenarios. And follow me with this. So Cease has a value of 33.6 on Baseball Trade Values. Wandy Peralta is another guy. He's locked up for the next 3 years. So that's a contract, even though he's only making $4.5 million. He's 30. He's almost going to be 34 years old. So I think that's a contract that the Padres wouldn't mind shedding. I mean, Wandy Peralta is more of a luxury. He's not an option for a team like the Padres looking to cut payroll. Now, Wandy Peralta has an opt-out after every single year, so he could opt out after this year. He could opt out after next year. But if Peralta has a season like he did last year, he's not going to opt out. Now, Peralta is a guy, he's a lefty. He can get it up to the really mid-90s, 96, 97 at most. He averages a 95.6 mile per hour fastball, but he's a very good weapon. A lefty out of the pen. You combine him with AJ Minter, and you have a huge upgrade. You don't have these soft throwing lefties. This guy is a ground ball machine. He's got a good sinker, but he's got an amazing changeup. So you put him in the pitching lab. This is a guy that I think could be another weapon, but also I think he's a guy that can get a trade done. So if you look at his value in Baseball Trade Value, it is minus 10. So if you take Cease's 33.6 value, then you minus 10.2. Now the value that the Mets are trying to beat is 22.6. Now Jet Williams alone is 22.10. So 22.6 and Jet Williams 22.10. And I include Jet Williams because he's a top prospect and he's a guy who can play second base for the Padres for the next 6 years. He's a guy with all the potential in the world. I mean, even if the Padres want to play him, I mean, the Mets have him playing center field. He's not going to play center field for the Padres, but maybe he can play left field in the future for the Padres if it's not second base. Also, it's the other part of the trade is interesting. So we have Jet Williams and we have Cease and Peralta coming back to New York. The other part of the trade is we're going to put Starling Marte. Now, if you look at Baseball Trade Values, Marte has a negative value of minus 17. That wouldn't be good because obviously if the Mets are 22, minus 17 would mean the Mets have to give up more. The only reason why Marte's value is 17 is because he is owed money and his money is negative 20. So if you subtract his on-field value, which is 3, and you pay down his salary, which is negative 20, you are left with a positive value of 3. So that means the Mets would be sending back a total value of 26, and they'd be acquiring a value of 22. So that would mean that the Mets this trade technically would go through if you are a baseball trade value GM. In fact, the Mets would be giving up way more value if they pay down the whole contract of Starling Marte. And I think that is extremely beneficial because now you have, I think to get this done, and I have here that the Mets would have to give up a top 20 prospect. I think the Padres would still want more. Maybe that would be a Blade Tidwell. I think that would probably have to be something to get it done because these baseball trade values, I've noticed that teams usually want like more than what the baseball trade value. So I would predict it would probably have to take a Jet Williams, a Starling Marte, or a Blade Tidwell, or if you want to put a Tyler McGill in that. So, I mean, you can do, and both Blade Tidwell and Tyler McGill have a value around 10. So, technically, the full value going back would be 35, about 35 points going back to San Diego, 22 points coming back to 22 points coming back to the Mets. So would you do that trade? Dylan Cease, Wandy Peralta for Jet Williams, Starling Marte, and then let's just say a top 20 prospect. I'm inserting Blade Tidwell. I'm inserting or Tyler McGill, either Blade Tidwell or Tyler McGill. So you could start the package there. Jet Williams, Starling Marte, and if you want to pick another top 20 prospect or the third player you want to interchange elsewhere, because we are giving up way more value than we are getting. But right now, the iron is hot. The iron really is hot. And if you have a chance to upgrade your rotation for 2025, I believe you have to seize the moment. If you go back to last year, I believe if we got a frontline starter, that could have been the difference. We came 2 games shy of the World Series. And I think that shocked a lot of folks. I think the Mets are again going to be a lot better than folks anticipate. And I think now David Stearns had a year of seeing what transpired. I think he is going to prepare for all scenarios. I think last year we exceeded expectations. I don't think Stearns was prepared for that. I really don't think he would. He felt we were good, but I don't think he felt we were that good to potentially beat the Dodgers. Now, if we had that frontline starter, Kodai Senga comes back, I mean, that could have been special, folks. That could have been special. All right, folks. Again, let me know what you think. Like and comment. And now we're going to get to the exclusive comments that were made by Mr. Pete Alonso, aka the Polar Bear, and why I believe the Mets were so motivated in the end to bring him back. And that involves his interaction with David Stearns. So Pete Alonso, according to the Mets, has a renewed motivation, and it was made way more than contract drama, according to Mr. Mike Puma. So we all know David Stearns, the team's president. He ended up signing Alonso to that 2-year contract worth $54 million. There is that all very special opt-out after this season. Pete Alonso, the goal for the Polar Bear, obviously, is to have a monster year. That doesn't even have to be said. So it was asked of David Stearns, why do you think Alonso will be motivated? Will he be motivated just to have a big season so that he gets a payday? Well, Stearns actually cited a different reason, and this was one of the reasons why he was signed back here. In their conversation, that very important sit-down, David Stearns and Steve Cohen wanted to hear that Pete Alonso wanted to be a Met. Just like Pete Alonso wanted to hear from Steve Cohen that they wanted him. They all needed to hear that they wanted each other. But another thing that Pete Alonso expressed is that he expressed to us that he wants to win a World Series as a Met. Stearns said. I mean, folks, that should be music to every single Mets fan. Pete Alonso wants to win a World Series for Mets fans. I mean, that's what I love to hear, because I always say all these moves at the end of the day, are they going to lead to us having a better chance at the World Series? Because that is the ultimate goal. It's not to be good. It's not to make the playoffs. At the end of the day, win a World Series. And if Pete Alonso wins a World Series and he's the all-time home run king as a Met, he will be a legend for life. So again, Stearns said he knows he's a big part of our ability to do that, and it's him producing at a high level. And Stearns goes on to say, I think Pete has had good years the last couple of years, but not as good, not as elite, not at the standard that he set at the front of his career. And I think he is very motivated to demonstrate that he's achievable, that those numbers are still achievable for him. Folks, I think that is amazing. Stearns basically opened up and said the last couple of years are good, but they're not as good as what Pete Alonso set for himself. In the beginning of the year, and I always separate Pete's career from 2019 to 2022 and from June of 2023 till now. I mean, after he was hit in June of 2023 by Charlie Morton, he came back as a different guy. He really did. Whether his swing changed a bit, whether his mechanics changed, whether his mental state changed. And I believe the mental part of the game, I'm going to continue to say this. Those of you who listen to this show always know I harp on the mental end of the game. Francisco Alvarez said the other day, the mental part of the game is super important, and that is what he's worked on. These guys, as much as they spend time in the cage, as much as they spend time on these drills, they have to spend just as much time on the mental part of the game. Greg Maddux, he said 60% of his time, the game's 60% mental. I'm going to spend 60% of my time working on my mental to prepare my mental state. So I think that is super important. So again, these guys, Pete Alonso, it looks like he is in a better mental position. So Alonso turned 30 this year. He really, really could benefit in a lineup that obviously includes Juan Soto. Mark Vientos, another year under his belt. I think he's going to be better. The lineup, I think we're still going to have improvements. I really think we're going to have improvements. I was thinking about expanded trades with the Padres, and I'm like, okay, how could we upgrade our situation and help the Padres out? I mean, I was like, okay, maybe we could get a Luis Arraez, put him as DH, or switch him around and then take back his salary and then possibly send back another top 20 prospect. Those were other things I was trying to do to expand the Padres package. But folks, I just wanted to mention that. I wanted to keep it simple, but who knows? Stearns might get ultra creative with the Padres. I mean, he might see an opportunity there to say, hey, I got a team on the ropes. They need to get rid of money. There could be a whole slew of things if they want to open up that trade to a bigger package. Okay. All right. So to get back to the Stearns Pete situation. So Stearns cast aside the notion that it was just Steve Cohen, the owner, alone who wanted Alonso back, because that was a lot of the talk. And I even said it. I'm like, I don't know if he's a Stearns guy. And then at the end of the day, it took Steve Cohen coming in on his white horse to save the contract and get Alonso back here for 2025. So there was a lot of rumor, a lot of innuendo that Stearns didn't want Pete Alonso back. So whether Stearns wants him back or not, publicly, he has always stated that he does want him back, and he reiterates that, saying Steve wasn't the only one that wanted him back. I wanted him back too. And that's just smart business. Pete Alonso's on the team. There shouldn't be any nonsense about Stearns making comments negative about Pete. Stearns is a lot. He wouldn't do that. All right, so Cohen last week, we know, flew to Tampa to meet with Alonso for about 3 hours with Stearns, his agent Scott Boras, and then the decision came the following day about Alonso reaching that agreement. Stearns again said he wanted Alonso back. He, in quotes, says he makes us a better team. We're in a spot where we feel like we've got a really good team. We're trying to win as many games as possible. And then obviously Mike Puma goes on to say that there were many different deals that the Mets offered Pete Alonso. So Stearns went on to say, for both sides, how we're looking at it, how Pete was looking at it, each side is going to have different objectives, Stearns said, and clearly the length of the contract is one objective. Average annual value is another objective, and you tried to do different structures on either side. This was a combination of average annual value, structure, and length that overlap for both sides. I think it works well for both sides. And just to comment on that, for all of you who have missed my video last week when we went into the in-depth conversation about that meeting, the Mets last minute, so the day before he signed, upgraded their offer to Pete. The first year offer, that $30 million that it turned out to be, that wasn't what he was initially offered. To get the deal done, Steve Cohen sweetened the pot. Both sides came out like looking like they can actually feel good about something. And Pete Alonso, as much as you wanted to, get as good value, you wanted Pete Alonso to come away feeling good about this. And him making that $30 million, being the highest paid first baseman in all of baseball, the second highest paid average annual value first baseman yearly salary of all time. Only Miguel Cabrera had a higher average annual salary. So you wanted him and Scott Boras to feel good. And also, too, if you're Scott Boras, did you really want to die on this hill with Steve Cohen? I mean, Scott Boras was pushing all these crazy, crazy narratives and, making the Mets putting them in this light. But how far could you go if you were honestly Scott Boras? As I detailed last week, there's only 3 or 4 teams in all of Major League Baseball actually spending big money. The Mets being one of them, and yet the Dodgers, the Yankees too, and then the rest of baseball spent, almost just as much as the Mets spend. So if you're Scott Boras, do you really, really want to get Steve Cohen upset? If you lose the Mets on Scott Boras free agents, Scott Boras, you are literally screwed. So, I mean, like, again, that was also something I'm like, all right, Scott Boras, if you're smart for your own business, you got to find a way to get this done. All right, so all in all, we know the Mets need Pete Alonso to have a good season. Pete Alonso needs to have a good season for his own sake. And at the end of the year, Pete Alonso will have that compensation pick not attached to him. Hopefully, he will achieve his objective in winning that World Series for the New York Mets. And folks, I am saying this, the Mets are going all in for 2025. There have been a lot of talk, and I keep reiterating this talk about about David Stearns being cheap, about him not making moves, about him not being aggressive. No, that's not the case. Obviously, the Mets spent the most money in this offseason, not by a lot, by tremendous amount. I mean, by ridiculous amount. I mean, the Dodgers spent a little over 300 million, close to 400 million. The Yankees almost 300 million. Everybody else not even close to them, but the Mets spent $1 billion. $1 billion. The Mets will have the second highest payroll this year, and also they will, if they any opportunity for the Mets to get better, they will increase that payroll, if need be. So the Mets, you can't complain about pay. A lot of teams you can complain about them not opening up and not shelling out salaries, but the Mets are not a team you can complain about. And the Mets paying Pete Alonso $30 million when they were already at the $300 million mark, knowing that they have to pay double tax. I mean, you're paying Pete Alonso technically closer to $60 million. So you give them a lot of credit for being willing to do that. Other teams, knowing that they're at the $300 million mark, would try to say, all right, maybe we'll give you a 3-year deal, 15 or 10 million in year one, and they'll backload it like other teams tend to do. But the Mets, I gotta say, the Mets, they're being very smart because they're building a brand. They are building a product now. They are not deferring money so they can be in payroll hell. They are not doing all these things that really would put them in a jeopardy for a disaster in a couple of years. They are building the business the right way by investing in the beginning, investing in themselves now. I give credit to Steve Cohen, and this is why I say the Mets. I've been saying this. Go look at my videos years ago, 2 years ago, especially when the Mets signed David Stearns. I said all of baseball, MLB will be scared. I said last year, in the beginning of last year, I said the Mets were a top three team. Everybody, I had comments go, oh, you don't know baseball. What are you, stupid? Okay, the Mets finished top three. I said the Mets were a top three team in the in the National League. All these things I predicted the Mets were better than the Yankees last year. I said the Mets would fight for a World Series last year. I said the Mets were set up with Steve Cohen, who has more money than any other, and he's ultra aggressive. David Stearns, who is considered a baseball genius. The Mets front office and leadership is like none other in any of their history. You know, they've never had a guy like Steve Cohen. Obviously, we can all agree on that. But David Stearns is also special. He may not have those, interpersonal skills that Steve Cohen does, but who the hell does? I mean, Steve Cohen is a guy with 20-something billion dollars. He's been in thousands of negotiations. He is a guy that is on a different level, and he's in a different stratosphere. He is probably the best one-on-one negotiator in all of baseball. Better than any president, better than any GM. So if David Stearns needs an assist from his partner, Steve Cohen, they complement each other perfectly because they both approach things. They got different skill sets, but you got to take advantage of Steve Cohen's, deal closing skill set and his people skill set. I mean, that is off the charts. So Steve Cohen, again, I will give credit over and over for putting your money where your mouth is. Steve Cohen has been losing money in the last couple of years. Attendance was down last year. I mean, these have been things that, most fans don't realize that the Mets were losing money. Most fans don't realize attendance was down last year. We were down in 2024 as compared to 2023. 2023, when we had that crappy, year, we had a higher attendance. We had more ticket sales. I mean, the thing is, it's really about superstar, and we had Verlander, we had Scherzer, so we spent $40 million a piece. So that helped out ticket sales. I will admit to that. I expect ticket sales to be up exponentially this year because of the superstar power, because now the fan base knows how legit of a team this is. But, we have to understand where the Mets have been and where they are going. And folks, they are building something special here. It was a 35-40 minute podcast from the Baseball America scouts, the experts, and what they did was they detailed the Mets farm system. So I would really implore anybody who didn't see that specific podcast, go on YouTube, go look at Baseball America, and go look at like Mets review of top prospects. And basically they detailed how maybe the Mets don't have, a bunch of top 10, top 20 prospects, but the Mets whole farm system went from here to here. So maybe they don't have the top end guys that are up here, but everybody, they raised the level of the entire farm system. So they all hold their top 20, their top 25 prospects are all very, very solid. And that meaning that, in a couple of years, your top 20 prospect, that could be your number one prospect, your top 18 prospect. So there are prospects all over, like Jonathan. He could end up being your top prospect. Javier Baez, he could end up being your top prospect. I mean, so many guys, even though they're not ranked as your one or two right now, your future looks very, 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 very bright. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited about the way the Mets are approaching just building this organization, building this farm system, and you gotta thank Steve and Alex Cohen for supplementing, because this all takes time. I will repeat, the Dodgers, I believe this new ownership bought the Dodgers in 2011. The Dodgers didn't win a World Series until 2020. It took them almost 9 years to get there. Steve Cohen has only had this team a full four seasons. We are going into our fifth season. So if we did things the way the Dodgers did things, it would take us almost another 5 years to get to that World Series. Hopefully we get there before that. I expect to get there before that. Making moves like Juan Soto really speeds up the process, and Steve Cohen spending all that money speeds up the process. You look at the Dodgers, this current reiteration of their roster, they've been building a long time. The Mookie Betts trade happened 5-6 years ago. They really kind of reshaped their roster, and just, you really give them credit for that. So, you got to be a little patient with the Mets, but they're going in a great direction. I've been waiting for this blockbuster signature trade by David Stern, and I think right now it just makes so much sense. The Padres and the Mets currently really, really match up. And I think when there's smoke, there's fire, and there seems to be so much smoke around the Padres, and I think the Padres, if they made this move first, let's just say they made the move with the Mets first, and they traded Dylan Cease, they would lose leverage in the Nick Pivetta negotiations. So signing Nick Pivetta before they make a trade, really, really makes all sense. And I think they got him at a pretty decent contract. 4 years, $55 million. I mean, the Mets paid 3 years, 75 for Sean Manaea. Sean, I think, is a lot more potential. But Nick Pivetta, he's a nice pitcher. The Padres have to give up a compensation pick. That's what I didn't really like about Pivetta. But the Padres are in a different position than we are. All right, folks, let me know what you think. What are your comments? What do you think about the Padres trade? What do you think about, is now the time? Would you pull the trigger? Again, I said we have I feel that we had a 90% chance of making a trade for a frontline starter. Because, all these moves, when you identified in the beginning of the season, every single thing that appeared to be obvious. Oh, you need to sign Sean Manaea. Oh, you need, to bring back a big hitter in here. Everything. Oh, you need an upgrade in the bullpen, AJ Minter. Everything that appeared to be obvious and appeared that the Mets needed, and we weren't getting at the time because David Stearns was going at his own pace. Everybody was mad at. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it looks like almost every single box is checked off. Now, what do I anticipate? I anticipate a frontline starter. Already said that. Now, I also anticipate possibly upgrading the DH position. Why the DH position? Well, the other options would be center field and second base. But today and yesterday, listening to David Stearns, he says that one of the biggest reasons why an Iglesias deal did not work out, and they did offer him the deal before they signed Madrigal. So, they got Madrigal. Now it wouldn't work out because there is no position available. Madrigal's going to play a bench versatility role. And they want to leave second baseman open for the kids to come up and to be developed. And I think it's so smart. That is so smart to leave an avenue for the kids. Center field is also a potential other avenue. I mean, I hope Jose Siri, I hope he just develops and breaks out onto another level. That would be amazing. It would be amazing if Drew Gilbert, dominates, Jose Siri dominates. It'd be amazing if a bunch of guys dominate. It just upgrades all our potential trade chips. It upgrades our organization. I just feel like we're going in such a great direction. I feel like David Stearns continues to play chess, continues to really be 10 steps ahead. I mean, we're looking like, oh my God, we don't have this, we don't have that. I mean, David Stearns has a plan. He's like, he's looking, well ahead. Like when you drive, you got to look a couple 100 feet ahead. You don't just look at like what, right here. You got to look far ahead. And that's what David Stearns is doing, looking far ahead. He's like, I got the trade deadline. I got so many different options and different opportunities to upgrade. If I look at every single deal as my only chance to make a deal, you're going to make dumb decisions. That's why, the Yankees, I mean, they could either hit a home run or they could have strike out. Like I expect Devin Williams to be a very good move, but the Bellinger Goldsmith situation, I'm not so convinced on. I mean, Max Fried, I'm not so convinced on. Those four moves were very aggressive. They were very quick. They were very concise. It felt good in the moment. Could turn out well, but I think that David Stern is a guy who would rather eliminate risk. I'll take a chance on a guy if I'm not going to pay him a lot of contract, if I'm not going to pay him a lot of money. I mean, Cody Bellinger is going to cost 50 something million dollars. Max Fried is going to cost $220 million. Goldsmith, Goldie, that's not that bad. It's a $13 million deal. But at the end of the day, you can't waste a year if you're the Yankees. If Goldsmith's all of a sudden going to get old at age 37, which is pretty reasonable, then you waste another year of Judge and Garrett Cole in their prime. So that holds a lot of risk in itself besides the salary. So, all right. So all in all, I like the direction that we're going in with David Stearns. I like the calm, patient approach. Let me know what you think. How short are we from being a legit World Series contender? What am I missing? What do we still need? In today's video, we would be getting a frontline starter and we would be getting another lefty out of the bullpen. So upgrading the bullpen, upgrading the starting rotation, really upgrading our pitching at this point. I think that we are so stacked with the hitters, the offensive players, especially if you look at our farm. I think we still need upgrades in the pitching. All right, folks, we're gonna call it quits right now. Thank you so much as always. Again, I'm going to continue to mention this. When we get to 3,500, we will be doing a raffle. So anybody who has a paid membership, I think I got about 7 or 8 folks. The first raffle is going to be, we are raffling off a $25 gift card. At 4,000, it goes up to $50 gift card. At 5,000 subs, it goes up to a jersey. And those jerseys, they are pretty decently priced. So if you are a paying member right now, I mean, you stand a pretty good odds of winning these prizes. So it's my way of saying thank you for helping support the channel. If you'd like to go look at some of our member packages, please, I would implore you to go check it out. No pressure. But, again, I will, over time, I will have these fun things. And then when we eventually grow to, hopefully a bigger channel, one day, then we'll open it up, these giveaways, to more of the subs. So thank you again. I appreciate each and every one of you. Let's go Mets. And again, we will be giving you these updates a lot more frequently, since obviously now we got spring training. First spring training game is on the 22nd of February. So that is quickly approaching. And then the Mets opening up in about 5.5 weeks. So thank you as always. Talk to you very soon.